And we're lucky now to be joined by White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain. Hi there.
Hey, Nicole. Thanks for having me.
So I know you're busy this time of day. This is sort of when all the problems that you haven't dealt with yet end up on your desk and everyone wants an answer before a normal end of business. So we're happy to see you. I wonder if you can explain the policy, explain what you hope it achieves, and then explain how sustainable it can be.
Well, so, Nicole, look, what we need, as the president said, we need to replace the gap in U.S. supply caused by the president's decision to block Russian oil imports into the United States, to punish the Russians. But that obviously creates a gap in supply here in the U.S. In the long run, we're going to fill that gap by increasing oil production here to make up that difference. The president talked about that today, talked about things like use it or lose it for oil leases that we've given to the industry. What the industry tells us is it'll take a few months for them to ramp up production and make up the lost Russian oil. And so in the meantime, what we're doing is this release of 1 million barrels a day from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. That's a bridge in our supply to get us to where domestic produced oil can make up what we've lost from Russia. We think it's very sustainable. We think it'll take about 6 months for domestic production to catch up. So doing 1 million barrels a day for 6 months closes that gap and helps make sure that we minimize the impact on the American people. We know, the president said from day one, that if Russia went into Ukraine, we would put crippling sanctions on Russia. Much of the burden of that would fall on Russia, but we would feel some of the pain here at home. And we're seeing that pain in rising gas prices, in the Putin price hike. Our effort today is to try to soften the blow on American consumers, even as we all do what we need to do to confront President Putin's aggression.
We've monitored your rapid response today to the policy rollout, and you push back on someone describing the move and the policy as a drop in the bucket with this language you're using. It's about closing the gap. If you could just follow up on that and explain how the Defense Production Act is also being deployed to help with this, what the president called pain at the pump.
Yeah. So the tweet you're talking about, someone noted that global oil production is 100 million barrels a day. What does 1 million barrels do? Well, again, most of that production continues to flow. And indeed, OPEC Plus raised its production today. So it's not about replacing all the oil production in the world, because, again, that continues. What it's about is replacing the gap in production by these sanctions against Russia. And in that context, this is a very significant release and gets us to the bridge. In terms of the Defense Production Act, another step the president announced today was using his authority to accelerate the production of some key minerals here in the U.S. so we can make sure we continue to produce batteries for electric vehicles. Because, again, in the long run, in the short run, we have to close this gap on oil supply. In the long run, of course, I think all Americans want us to move to cleaner power, move to a place where no country can hold us hostage over oil supply in the future. We're running a clean energy economy based on energy here in the U.S. The Defense Production Act order that the president did today helps make more progress on domestic battery production for electric vehicles.
Talk to me about how important it is to not just make this announcement today, just be here today. And I'm not trying to rope you into joining us every day at 5, although we wouldn't mind. We always have questions. But how important is it for the president to be out in front of this, understanding, as he said today, that prices are painful, explaining how much oil came from Russia, how much we can sort of backfill through these strategic reserves, and what the long-term plan is? How much of your time is spent figuring out how to not just solve the problems, but communicate and try to calm people down?
Well, look, Nicole, I think it's very important. I mean, the president's been very straightforward. We've really been at this in terms of Putin's aggression for 3 or 4 months now. And it was very important for the president to go in front of the American people and the world and say, hey, we believe Putin will invade Ukraine, and lay that out. First, then laying out his plan to do it through false flag operations and false provocations to take away Putin's any kind of putative rationale for what he did. And then to engage the allies publicly and directly and show that we have a united front. I think everything we've done has helped bring the allies together to confront Russia and Russian aggression. But for that to be sustainable for the long run, we have to have the support of the American people. They have to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. The president's been very honest that this would not be cost-free for us, that as we impose these devastating costs on Putin, he would be able to impose some costs back on us. And that's what we're seeing, particularly with this price hike at the pump. But we also are trying to make clear to the American people, we're going to try to soften that blow any way we can. We're trying to look out for the consumers here in this country, even as we deal with this crisis in Europe. I think that's part of presidential leadership. I think as we've seen from presidents in the past when they face these kinds of foreign policy crises, and that's what you're seeing from President Biden now.
The ex-president, who was impeached twice, once for trying to get dirt on the Biden family and the second time for trying to prevent the president from becoming the president, President Biden, that is, has for a third time engaged a foreign leader, Vladimir Putin, again this time, and asked him for dirt on the Biden family. I wonder, not your reaction personally as an advisor to the president, and I know anyone in your job also serves the first lady and the family, and these things are unpleasant, but as a national security question, what do you do with all of the sort of axis of flirtation and support for Vladimir Putin, even at a time when the U.S. Secretary of State has accused Putin of carrying out war crimes in Ukraine? What do you do with sort of the axis of Republican affinity for Putin that extends from Donald Trump asking him for more favors to work against current American president, Tucker Carlson giving him safe harbor, at least in a PR space?
Yeah, I think it's disgusting. It's obviously disgusting, Cole. I mean, we have Vladimir Putin, who every day we wake up and see him dropping bombs on hospitals, on schools, on children. And we have the former president who thinks that's a great person to try to engage in a political scheme with. It's absolutely disgusting. We're grateful for the fact that most Republicans on Capitol Hill are working closely with us to try to confront President Putin. We've had strong bipartisan support for aid, to provide economic aid, lethal aid, military assistance to the Ukrainians fighting President Putin. But if Donald Trump thinks that some kind of crackpot scheme conducted in conjunction with Vladimir Putin can serve his political interest, that will fail, as it has failed every time. And it says a lot about who Donald Trump is and how much he cares about our country's security.
Well, those questions have been asked and answered, and I'll ask you what those answers mean another time. I do want to ask you about the president's comments today about this intelligence assessment, about what Putin does or does not know, what he is and is not hearing. If you could elaborate on this idea that he's not receiving difficult truths from the battlefield, and how does that shape our strategy or our approach to him in any peace talks?
Well, Nicolle, I want to be careful about what I say on this topic. I do think there are some publicly released reports that indicate that President Putin may not be getting it straight from his military advisors, may not be listening to his military advisors, may be isolated from his military advisors. I think that's all interesting. It's important. It affects how we understand what's going on. But in the end, what really matters isn't President Putin's mindset. It's what President Putin is doing on the battlefield. And what he continues to do on the battlefield, notwithstanding his promises to do otherwise, is to inflict a devastating destruction on Ukraine. And that's why we continue to send every single day more weapons to the Ukrainians, more assistance to the Ukrainians, more aid of all sorts to the Ukrainians to confront that aggression and try to push back the actions by President Putin inside Ukraine. In the end, no matter what President Putin says, this is kind of distrust but verify. We don't really trust what he said. He said he had no intention to invade in the first place. He did. We don't trust what he's saying now about a pullback around Kyiv. We just see a kind of a repositioning of Russian forces. And most importantly, what we need to do is help the Ukrainians in this struggle any way we can.
Just really quick last question. Is the president feeling healthy? I know he was in a socially distanced meeting yesterday with the CIA director who tested positive for COVID.
Yeah, the president feels fine. I saw him today. Looks great, sounds great. American people saw him today, speaking earlier about gas prices. COVID is around. That's a reality. It's a reality in all of our workplaces. We take reasonable precautions here at the White House. The president, as you know, is fully vaccinated, got his second booster shot the other day. And so he's well protected from serious illness.